Charter Trustees, ladies and gentlemen, will you please be upstanding to receive the Worshipful, the Mayor of Poole? Thank you.
Please be seated. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome Charter Trustees, the press, and members of the public to this meeting of the Poole Charter Trustees. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone follow these ground rules for speaking. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand physically to indicate. Where there appears to be consensus in the meeting for a motion, I will ask if there are any dissensions. When a formal vote is required, this will be carried out by a show of hands. Charter Trustees are advised that there is no live stream of this meeting. However, it will be recorded via the 360-degree camera and uploaded following the meeting. As a courtesy, please do not talk amongst yourselves during the debates. And please note that we are required to vacate this room by 7 p.m, although I'm attending a mayoral event straight after, so I will be leaving at 6:30 if we're still in meeting, and the deputy will take over. Before we start with the business on the agenda, I would like to highlight that the Charter Trustees is a non-political body, with the primary objective being to maintain and promote the historic and ceremonial traditions of Poole. I am keen that we all work together to maintain this objective. Please may we have apologies for absence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies from your Honorary Clerk, Graham Farrant, this evening, as well as Charter Trustees, Councillors Burton, Cooper, Hadley, Butt, Walters, Bagwell, Rice and Broadhead.
Thank you, Honorary Clerk. Can you report on any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. None received to date.
Charter Trustees are asked to receive the minutes of the meeting held on 25th of January and 6th of June 2023 and to consider any matters arising. Are these agreed? Okay. Before I update you on my recent activities, some of you may be aware...
Sorry.
No? What? Oh.
Apologies, Madam Mayor and Councillors. On minute 6 of the most recent minutes, the appointment of Councillor Miles as Sheriff was unfortunately omitted from the minutes, so those will need amendment. So can I just ask for agreement subject to that amendment? Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Before I update you on my recent activities, some of you may be aware that sadly, former Mayoress of Poole, 2003 to 2004, Mary Rose Burden, passed away on Saturday. We send our heartfelt condolences to her friends and family. Please be upstanding to observe a minute's silence. Vicky wants to say something. First, we have a question from the Leader of the Council, Councillor Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I ask that when we are doing that minute silence, that we also remember the Mayor's escort, Mayor's escort, Mr. David Lepredevin, who sadly died on the 15th of May. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will now observe a minute's silence. Thank you. Please be seated. So I will now give you a very brief report on some of my activities since becoming mayor. My very first engagement was on the 7th of June at the Beehive Daycare Centre for people with severe disabilities. It was a really heartening event. It was so warming to see how well the people were cared for and how involved in the activities they were provided, the activities provided by the daycare centre. It's an absolutely amazing place. The reason for the event was that the patron of the Splash Appeal, who is the Duke of Kent, was there to unveil a plaque. So we were there to meet with him and the Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, Chairman of BCP, and the MP, Conor Burns, was also there. After unveiling the plaque, we had an opportunity to meet some of the day centre members, users, and it was a really absolutely fabulous day. They're currently raising funds to install a hydrotherapy pool for all the people there. It was lovely. And then on the 14th of June, I attended the dedication of a new Falklands Memorial in Falklands Square. That was also attended by the Lord Lieutenant of Dorset, Mr. Angus Campbell. Also, there were many veterans, members of the RBL, Royal Marines, Special Boats Services, and the purpose of that was to unveil a plaque, a memorial. A big 3-ton stone was brought in from the Falkland Islands, especially. Incredible piece of artwork. And I unveiled the stone and laid a wreath on behalf of the Borough of Poole. Then Saturday the 7th of June, it was a big fun day. I attended the Harry Pay Day with the Sheriff. He was in attendance also. We led the parade through the quay, down the High Street, and it was fantastic to see so many people outside having fun, enjoying themselves, celebrating the old tradition, one of the old traditions of Poole. We judged the fancy dress competition. That was good fun. And some of the outfits were amazing. The children really, really enjoyed it. It was a most fabulous, fabulous event. Highly recommend it if you've never been before. 19th of June, there was the Armed Forces Day flag-raising ceremony, which I attended with many members from Borough of Poole, including our council leader, Vicky Slade, and the Mayor of Bournemouth, Mayor of Poole, Mayor of Christchurch, and the Chairman of the Council. And then yesterday, my most recent event was the Mayor of Christchurch Civic Service at the Christchurch Priory. Very well attended. There were quite a lot of councillors there and local mayors from the surrounding area. It was lovely to meet some of the new mayors there and to get to know a few people and enjoy the service. It really brought everybody together. Thank you. Charter Trustees, as you know, Councillor Pete Miles was elected as the Sheriff of Poole for the current municipal year at the annual meeting on the 6th of June. As he was unable to be with us at that time, I will now present him with the Sheriff's wand and jail key. I will now ask the Sheriff to say a few words.
Yes, thank you very much. I think I'm going to enjoy the role. It's all about support, and support is a good thing, so I'm really happy to support Jo in her roles this year. And I think we look forward to working together, and hopefully we can push the trustees on a little bit more in the direction that we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff. I call upon Matt Filmer, the responsible financial officer, to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Charter Trustees. So the next two agenda items lead up to agenda item 8, which is the sign-off of the annual governance and accountability return, which is a statutory document that we've got to submit by the end of June. It's got to be published online, it's open to a public inspection, and then it's externally audited by the end of September. So the first part of that AGAR return, which I'll refer to, is the internal audit report. So you'll see on page 3 of that internal audit report, they focused on the annual governance, accountability, internal control objectives. And you'll see there that all the control environment objectives that are expected as an organisation of this size, we've all been rated as substantial or reasonable, which is an improvement from last year, I should add. On top of the review of the annual governance, accountability, control environment, the internal audit team have also looked at the wider entity in itself and looked at various other control areas. You'll see a summary of findings on page 4. There's no high priority findings, just medium and low. There's a number around some of the financial piece, so how we demonstrate value for money in terms of our spend as a Charter Trustee, and also the level of reserves, which I'll touch upon on the next agenda item. I'm not going to go through any of the detail on the internal audit report, but happily take any questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions? None? Okay. Can we move on? My apologies. I seem to have omitted item 5 from the agenda. Oops, sorry. So I now call upon Councillor Pete Miles to present the report. Okay. So I call upon Councillor Pete Miles to present the report of the Civic Working Group. Thank you.
Yes, we met recently and we all agreed the changes for submission to the rulebook, which I now propose we all accept. I need a seconder.
Is that accepted? Yes? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Brown, you have something to say?
Just having read through the amendments and the changes, there are quite a number of typos in there, so I don't know whether it can be just re-reviewed. There's things like the word military with the T missing and a few typos that I spotted as I went through, so if you can just approve subject to correcting typos.
Thank you very much. Well spotted. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Okay. Councillor Slade?
Thank you. I've got absolutely no problem with the changes on the rules. I just wanted, on the paper, there were a number of things which I thought, I was wondering whether it would be appropriate to take them back to the working group. The first thing is at the very beginning of the paper, hold on, in the background to the trust, it refers to the Borough of Poole being in existence from 1974. It makes no mention to the history of the mayoralty for the previous 750 years, which sort of suggests that it's come out of nowhere. And I just think it would be useful to understand what the role of the mayoralty was prior to being a unitary council, given that the mayoralty is now a charter mayor. The other thing that I didn't think was clear from the handbook was whether the organisation runs under the rules of the 1972 Local Government Act, which I've been told it does, but it just might be worth having that clarified for those people who often query with us what rule, under whose rights are we actually operating. The other point I wanted to raise about this paper, which I think is really useful, is under the section of the coat of arms. It would be really good if we could sort out once and for all the situation with our flag. Because we have a coat of arms, which is, I think, the flag that's displayed in front of your desk, and that is slightly different from what is on the Poole flag. And I really think it would be really sad if we got to another term without resolving this. And also for the working group to have a conversation about whether our flag should be flown from this building if this is going to be our home as a point of standard, and which buildings should have the Poole flag or our coat of arms as opposed to the Union flag, given that these are not civic buildings but historic buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. Councillor Trent?
Yeah, I've got a feeling that at the previous civic working group, and perhaps Councillor Lepodovin might sort of confirm it, or possibly even the previous Charter Trustees, we approved the design that was put before us some while ago, which is basically the coat of arms on a background, I think, with a blue border around it. And I think we actually approved it, but it's worth checking to see whether it was actually minuted somewhere. But I'm pretty certain that we did go along with it, and that was prior to the last elections.
Thank you, Councillor Trent. Councillor Slade?
Yeah, and I've just come back. Obviously, we talk about the coat of arms in here. It would probably then be worth adding a paragraph to that bit about the heraldry, just so that the people, particularly the Society of Poole, are satisfied that we have concluded the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to confirm, trustees, at the January meeting, the coat of arms was agreed in terms of a design for the flag. It was delegated that the working group would have final sign-off to refine this design, and then work with the flag printers to have that actually put in place. So that was the minutes of the meeting in January, delegated to the working group. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Well, thank you for that.
Oh. Councillor Potvin.
Thank you for that, but I wanted to confirm that we did agree it long before January at Charter Trustees, because it was when I was mayor and I chaired the meeting. We were actually still in the Civic Centre in the council chamber, so it's a lot earlier than January. I've also got one little quibble. Right at the start, it refers to the abolishment of the Borough of Poole. Surely the noun from abolish is abolition.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potvin. Someone here now. I call upon Matt Filmer, Responsible Financial Officer, to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the next agenda item is in regards to the budget outturn report for 22-23. We achieved a surplus of just over 15,000. But actually, if you look at Appendix A of the report, you'll see that we were actually expecting to draw down a level of reserves to support last year's budget of 13,500. So actually, the underspend is about 28,000. So that goes on top of the existing reserves that we brought forward of 118,000, which means we bring forward reserves of 134,000. Now, the reason for the underspend, the majority of the budget for the Charter Trustees is actually fixed in terms of recharges between the Charter Trustees and the Council. The underspends are around the activities of the Charter Trustees that have a choice in terms of what they do. So around sort of some of the civic events, civic service, etc., where we've consistently had underspends. So the reserves level, in comparison to our overall preset for 24, let's get it right here, 23-24, with the expectation of using some money to support the coronation activities that already happened, it's still around 87% of the council tax precept. So it is a lot higher than we would expect in terms of being able to cover any sort of risk activities that may foresee. So we've been in this position before. We've seemed to constantly have underspends. So I think my suggestion is next time we meet that I bring a paper setting out some of the options that we have before the budget setting meeting. So either to look at the council tax level or look at planned usage of those reserves. I'll stop there and happily take any questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Slade?
Thank you very much. I have gone through the details of the expenditure and income, Matt, as you might expect. And there are a few things I just think need a bit of clarification. So I'm slightly concerned that if these are now actual figures, for example, the mayor making is down as 0, where there was a mayor making event last year, there was a lunch, invitations would have been sent, there must have been some costs, and I'm worried that if we're going down with a 0 cost for mayor making when there was an event, that doesn't feel quite right. Another one which doesn't look right, the Broadstone Remembrance Parade is down as 1,500. I know for a fact that several £100s were sent back to the council because of an underspend. And the other ones, which seem strange, is the recharge over the salaries. If BCP Council had to increase the staff over and above the budgeted amount, why wasn't the recharge higher, or was it because it's contractually fixed? It just feels some of the numbers on here are lovely round figures, which feel a little bit like, a bit too round. And the one that I brought up last year and the year before, and probably the year before that, is the vehicle cost. It's not credible to me that we are only paying £2,000 a year, presumably to BCP, for use of those cars. That suggests, and £17 of fuel. I mean, I'm sure it must be £17 of fuel just from one event, but that isn't credible. And it suggests to me that BCP Council are subsidising the Charter Trustees of Poole, and presumably similarly the Charter Trustees of Bournemouth. And actually, we have some money and the council does not. So it feels like we really need an honest conversation about what are the true costs of this organisation, because £2,000 a year for access to a vehicle is frankly... can I rent it for £2,000 a year, please? Because it would be cheaper than a little car hire. Thank you.
Yeah, please do.
For you, Madam Mayor, I'll respond. I made some notes just to pick up on those points. So the trouble we've had is a lot of the expenditure of the Charter Trustees has been on credit cards. So it's quite difficult to decipher what's for each event. So the mayor making an example, money was spent on catering and stationery, but it's hard to then to decipher on that credit card statement what was for mayor making. Even so, the spend on mayor making was minimal. Wasn't anywhere in the region of £1,500. The next point around the Broadstone Remembrance Day, if you look at just below, there's a miscellaneous income line of £158. That's the money that's come back that was reimbursed from the Broadstone Remembrance. These are rounded figures as well, by the way, so they're not to the decimal. The recharge salary, that is contractually fixed. That's contractually fixed when we set the budget. The vehicle council recharge, we have a mechanism within the council for internal usage of transport, and we've replicated that for the charge for the Poole and the Bournemouth Charter Trustees. Because of the life of that asset, because it's normally held for, I forget what the usage was, up to about 10 years, I think it was, it comes out at around £2,000. So there is a calculation behind that charge. The fuel costs are similar to the mayor making in that the purchase of fuel has gone on credit cards. Those credit card bills have been paid by the council, and then it's for the council to invoice the Charter Trustees for reimbursement of those costs. Those costs are included on here because this is done on what we call an accruals basis. So they are on here. They're probably within the hospitality budget because that seems to be where most things have fallen. But the fuel costs are there. If I could just go before the last point, it will improve because the new financial system that we've implemented, the Charter Trustees will be using, the credit cards are linked to that system. So when someone goes to input their credit card statement, they have to code it up to the correct allocation, and it will just populate this as per the categories. At the moment, it's very manual. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Slade?
Thank you. I do understand and accept that. I just think that anybody watching this will say there is no company in the land that wouldn't expect the person driving the car to keep the receipt for the fuel and submit it, and then you'd actually know how much was being spent on fuel. It's just, it does make it a little bit laughable. I get that the total income and the total outgoings is the one that matters, but I will have to abstain on this because I don't actually think it's a true and accurate reflection of the income and outgoings, and I just don't see that I would be willing to sign for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Trent?
Yeah, thank you. I think when it comes to transport, I think it's worth noting that most of the longer trips are actually done on a self-drive basis. And I, for one, haven't claimed back any of my self-drive mileage, and that probably exceeds the amount of internal mileage. We do have an arrangement, as far as I understand, that 20% of the cost of the transport and the support of the transport is paid for by BCP under the chairman's side. 40% Poole Charter Trustees, 40% Bournemouth Charter Trustees. So whatever we would be paying would be sort of 40% of the total. The one thing I wanted to say, and I do think we need to consider having an event where we can go through what we're doing, what we're spending, what our aspirations are as Charter Trustees, because I think we are underperforming, and the fact that we've actually built up what I think is an embarrassing set of balances. We are using, for example, this equipment. A lot of this is loaned by members of the staff. When we first looked at using the Guildhall, I had suggested that out of the embarrassingly large balance we've got, that we should buy or get quotes and to see whether it is possible to buy some audio-visual equipment that we could live stream meetings that we can use for these meetings, and we can loan maybe with some kind of recharge to the Guildhall for their weddings and things like that. Because I've been to funeral recently, for example, where the person who had passed away came from abroad, and that was actually being broadcast to her relatives in China. So, I think the Guildhall would benefit greatly from us having the equipment here on hand as a charter trust that they can use for their purposes. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be looked at, and I was going to propose an available opportunity that we actually have a sort of a workshop meeting, not the budget one that we have in sort of December, something a lot earlier that looks at the way the Charter Trustees are working, the future of the Charter Trustees, the morality and so on. I know that the Mayor feels some anxiety about, are we really making the best of what's going on? And I think, we ought to be looking to an away half day or away evening or something at Upton House. So I think we do need to look at what we're doing and actually make sure that, A, we are not just sitting on a lot of money. Because you could be tempted to do, you know, the zero increase and all this kind of thing, which I think we will probably have to do, but we're sitting on an enormous balance. But some of it could be being realistically used on, for instance, making this equipment ours and being able to do exactly what we do at council meetings. So I do think that we need to look at these things and maybe have a discussion, you know, in an environment that isn't as rushed as one of these meetings would be.
Thank you, Councillor Trent. That's something that we could take forward for discussion at a civic working group that all members of the Charter Trustees could be involved in, and we can discuss that all together. Councillor Howell.
Yes, thank you. Something I suggested last year, I think, was that we ought to use some of this money to give away as grants. You know, there are a lot of people doing really good things in our community who really struggle to get grants, especially if you know, they're not part of a, you know, formal registered charity. You know, they're still doing good things in their communities. A grant of, you know, £500 up to £2,000 could make an enormous difference, and also really be a good publicity mechanism for the Charter Trustees. And, you know, I think we ought to, you know, look at that quickly, because, you know, there's no point in the money just sitting there in the account.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. That's something that can be brought to the committee well, the working group when we meet. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I've just got a query on the accounts, not on the expenditure side, but on the income side. I just wanted clarification, because there's quite a substantial investment income of £4,712 this year against a budget of £150, which, compared to what we're spending, you know, to get 4,700 investment income is very good. And I know interest rates have gone up, but could I just clarify what that investment income is? Because it strikes me that's more than what bank interest rates are. I'm conscious we haven't got a bank, well, we have the sort of council bank account. So is the council sort of reimbursing us some investment income, or how does that work?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the Charter Trustees reserve balance is pooled as part of BCP Council's Treasury investments, and so then it sort of takes advantage of its much wider position and then can gain higher investment income. When we set the budget, and I'd have to double check, I think we set it on a budget of around 0.25% in terms of investment return. I think our outturn was in the region of around 4% by the time we finished the year. So that goes to reflect some of it, but also we were under the expectation that reserves would come down for 22-23, and they didn't. Reserves have gone up. And because we look at it on a monthly basis profile, balances kept going up, investment return goes up, hence the difference.
Are we happy to accept the report, the budget report? Yeah, everybody else?
Can I just accept it on the basis that we will have the opportunity to look at these things, and, you know, Councillor Howell came up with some good ideas, you know, to actually have an away day type of event so that we can look at these things early on in this mayoral year, because I think we need to sort things out a bit.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think we've taken away that item, so we will have a working group to which we'll extend an invitation to all members with a workshop style to discuss those issues, including those suggested this evening, but try and thrash them out in a little bit more detail at that working group. I note a number of members have indicated they may wish to abstain, so I think if you perhaps just ask for an indication of those who wish to agree to the outturn, and then an indication of those against and abstaining.
Okay. Can I have a show of hands, please, for everybody who accepts the budget outturn?
6.
Okay. And those who are against? Okay. And Those who abstain?
10, 11, 12, I think it is. Okay, but it's carried.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Clerk. I'll now go to item 8 on the agenda. I call upon Matt Filmer, Responsible Financial Officer, to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there's two recommendations to this agenda item that need to be approved tonight. The first is the annual governance statement, which is on page 4 of the AGAR return. And this effectively mirrors what was on agenda item 5 on the internal audit report. So where I mentioned that we've had substantial reassurance around the objective, the internal audit control environment, that effectively reflects that report. So if Charter Trustees are approval of that, we'll ask the Chairman and the Clerk after the meeting to formally approve that document. So I'll take that first part first, if we could, Madam Mayor.
So can we have a vote by a show of hands?
Those in favour?
Those in favour? Okay. Any against? And any to abstain? Back to Matt, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the second part is in regards to the accounting statement, which is reflective of the item agenda we just had previous to this. I will say that, just to give Charter Trustees reassurance, this is on a much more headline basis rather than the granular detail that we just seen. So if you see on page 5, it's asking for expenditure of staff and other. That's it. The rest of it is asking for the precept for the council tax, which is as it is as per the budget, and our closing reserve balances. So it's a lot more condensed, if you will, to the previous presentation you had before. The only addition on there that wasn't presented previous was the value of our fixed assets, which is 1.3 million, which is a reflection of the insurance cover that currently exists at the moment for all the civic regalia, and the total value of the cash and short-term investments, which ends the year at 210,000. The reason it's different to the reserve balance is to do with the differences in terms of timings of invoices between us and the council. So there's always a bit of a timing difference between those. So looking for formal approval of that, and it will be myself and the chairman to sign after this meeting's closed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So can I seek consent by a show of hands? Okay. And those against? Any abstentions? One. Thank you, that's carried. That concludes the meeting. I now formally declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Would you please stand whilst the Civic Party retires? Thank you.